The Polyline tool acts and behaves very similar to the line tool. You can see that we can draw a series of lines, press spacebar to finish, but there's one key difference. When we hover over these lines, we can see in fact that they are actually all one line, and when we select it, we can see now that it's all joined together. We can still change it using these blue squares, and when we move these nodes you can see it behaves very similar to like a rubber band, which is different to the line tool. If I draw a series of lines here, we can see that when we select and hover over these, they're all separate, and when we change them using the nodes, we're actually just changing the individual line. The polylines and the lines behave differently when we extrude them as well, so we'll be using the polyline tool a lot when we do 3D work. Normally we would want a closed loop, and we can do this by drawing the lines and at the end, to finish, right click and go to close. You can now see that this is one continuous object. Now we can turn lines into polylines and back again using two different commands. So here I'm going to draw an object using the line tool. Go to right click, close, and you can see that we can actually join these individual lines together by selecting them and using the modify tool, join. We now have an object that is a polyline, and we can turn it back again into individual lines by using this tool here, which is explode. Click on there and they're now back to being individual lines. We can also turn a polyline into lines using the explode function as well. The circle and the arc tool have split buttons, and we have the option to start the tool at the top and pick which type of circle we want to draw using the bottom half of the button. So for example, we have center radius, center diameter, 2 point, 3 point, tan radius and tan. And the order in which the words are written is the order in which the clicks happen. So for example, center radius, the first click will be center, the second click will be radius. We can also type in a dimension. So do the first click and type in, let's say 250, and we get a circle with a radius of 250. If we use the center diameter tool, first click is center, and if we type in 250 this time, we get a radius of 250, so therefore this is half the size of this one. The arc tool is very similar. We have a drop down menu and we have many ways of drawing an arc, and it just depends how you want to draw it and what sort of drawing you're doing. So for example, start, center, end will happen in that order: the start, the center and the end. Start, end, angle. Start is the first click, end, and then we can choose the angle, 45, or we can type one in, 50, and there's the arc. The rectangle tool works by default by first choosing the top left hand corner of the rectangle, dragging your mouse and then clicking for the bottom right. That's good, but not the most useful way of drawing a rectangle. Normally we'd want to choose what the length and the width are, and we can do that if we use the settings menu. Now most tools have a sub-settings menu, and we'll know that it's got one when we see this little white square with the down arrow on it. That means that we can press the down arrow on our keyboard to choose other settings. So for example, here we have chamfer, elevation, fillet, thickness and width. This is also replicated down here on the command line: chamfer, elevation, fillet, thickness and width, and we can either press on these buttons, or you can see this blue letter at the beginning. That's the letter that we can press on the keyboard. So if we wanted to do chamfer, press the C. Now these settings change depending on how far through drawing we are using that tool. So for example, if I start my first click and start to draw the rectangle, we can see that if I press the down arrow now, we get a different set of menu settings. So here we can pick dimensions, and now it says specify length for rectangle. Let's choose 1000, press enter, and for width we can put in 500. Press enter again. It's now drawn a rectangle that is 1000 by 500, and we can choose where that sits around our first point and press click to confirm. The Polygon tool lives in the drop down menu with the rectangle tool. When we choose Polygon tool, the first thing it asks us is how many sides, and we can have as many sides as we want on our polygon. So I'm going to choose 6 for a hexagon, press enter, and it says specify the center. Click to show the center, and now we have to choose whether we want it to be inscribed or circumscribed about the circle. And all that means is when it draws the polygon around the radius that you type in, do you want the angles to be completely within the bounds of that radius, or do you want the angles to stick out from that radius? By hovering over the Polygon tool button, we can see a good example here of what that means. The one on the left is inscribed, the one on the right is circumscribed. So let's have a go. We're going to click on this button, we're going to choose the number of sides, and it says 6, press enter, specify the center point. I'm going to choose inscribed and give it a radius of, let's say, 250, and there is our polygon.